from the J.C. Newman Cigar Studios in Boston, Massachusetts. Welcome to the Smokin Tabacco Show with your hosts, Matt Tobacco and Smokin Nicole.
And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Smokin Tabacco Show. I am Matt Tobacco from SmokinTabacco.com, and I am joined once again by my beautiful fiancée, Smokin Nicole. We are back from TPE 2022 in Las Vegas, and we have a very special guest with us tonight. One of my favorite guests from one of my favorite brands. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to get a little excited here. It's Mr. Pete Johnson making his return to the Smokin Tabacco Show. Pete, what up?
What's up? Hey, it's actually good to see you guys in real time. Because the last time we were on together, we had a glitch, and then when we first got on tonight, we had another glitch. But this is working out perfect. I can hear you great. Hopefully, you can hear me great.
Oh yeah,
I can see you moving in real time. This is good. I'm ready to go. Ready to go.
I couldn't decide what Tatuaje to smoke, and not just because like you were coming on or anything. I just like like we were talking before the show, you start buying so many cigars, and then you don't even know which ones to pick. So I have a few options here. I got the this year's release, or last year's release, of the T110 Broadleaf. I have the, you're going to have to help me out on this one again.
Global release.
Yes, I have that. Or, if you didn't know, I still have my Monster Mash that I have yet to dive into. And so, I don't know. I couldn't decide. I think I'm going to go.
Well, okay. So can I ask if you really feel that you're going to pay attention to the cigar, smoke the Clo Release.
All right, I'll do it. I will pay attention.
So don't get distracted by my comments. Just relax and smoke the cigar.
So just for the viewers at home, this was a limited run. Tell us just a little bit about this cigar.
That's actually one of 4 different cigars we made in Miami. One roller rolled all of the cigars. We made 1,000 cigars of each. We shipped them slowly over the last couple years to very few accounts. I think a total of 5 or 6 accounts in the country have access to those cigars. And actually, I think it's 7 total. And yeah, it's the plan was to do them once. They're kind of an homage of like the classic Cuban customs when you hear about people getting custom rolls from a roller down in Cuba.
Right.
That's where the kind of the history of it goes to. If you look at the band, it has a very reminiscent band to what they used to use for dignitaries that used to visit Cuba. So it's more of an homage to history. And the plan was to move on to 4 new sizes at a later date. But the problem is we can't find room to shift a roller to roll new sizes for us.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's right off the first light, it's that typical Don Pepin, Tatuaje, that pepper right up front, right on the palate, just comes at you real hot. A lot of flavor. Certainly delicious.
Very cool.
Very awesome. I mean, you can tell.
Yeah, those are rolled, I think, in 2018. So they got some years on them already.
Yeah, like I said, my sister got this for me a few years ago. She was down in Arizona at Ambassador Fine Cigars, and it was one of the ones that she got me. And I didn't recognize. I mean, I knew it was Tatuaje, but I didn't really recognize it. And at the time, I wasn't as versed in the brand, and I held on to it. For whatever reason, and then I was digging through one of my humidors the other day, and I found it, and I remember asking you about it, because I was like, I don't know anything about this, but I really wanted to try it, so...
Was it in its little coffin?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Got
Very
its little
cool.
coffin. I also have the longer one, Big Solomon, that was with it, too.
Yeah.
I have that.
Look at the coffin is even the writing on the coffin is an homage to an old coffin from Cuba from pre-embargo days, where it says handmade into it. You see how it says handmade on it?
It's 2 words.
Yeah.
I don't know if the camera.
So that's old school. That's actually mimics a pre-embargo coffin that I had. Even the bottom of the box that says made.
Yeah, HON USA.
Just a symbol.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah,
If
no,
you saw the coffin that I have, that's super old. Oh my God, it's an old Hoyne of Monterey. What was it? A diadema, and it's wrapped in foil paper completely. So you literally have to peel the foil paper off. It's kind of like, for lack of better words, it's kind of like a candy bar where you have to peel the foil paper off the cigar. In this case, I just wrapped it around there, so it was a little easier for people to get to.
Even the gold foil is like the homage to that as well, like all the way through.
Everything about that cigar is purely an homage to history. You know, old Cuban history.
Draw is amazing too. It's so
Yeah.
nice and loose. It's very easy to overheat the cigar if you smoke it too hard or too fast. But man, if you really take your time with it, a nice, really loose draw, this is going to be fantastic. That pepper is starting to kind of come down now and really get into the meat of the tobacco. Really opening up. It's really awesome. Nicole, what are you smoking though, by the way?
Me, I'm smoking the Capa Especial.
Oh, that's the Cohetes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, the new one, yeah.
The new one, yeah.
So this is actually my first one.
And so that's
Sumatra.
Very cool.
Yeah. Pete, what are you smoking over there?
I'm actually smoking a release that's coming out this year around the trade show in Vegas. Called it's a special release of Veracruz, but it's called Veracruz Blue.
Veracruz
and
Blue, okay.
What it is, it's a whole new twist on Veracruz. It goes back to, I don't know if you guys probably remember this, but back when Veracruz was first launched, we did a battle between East Coast, West Coast.
Oh, okay.
And they all came in 50 count cabinets, and there was two sizes, Veracruz number 1 and Veracruz number 2. We're going to do the 50 count cabinets in Veracruz number 1 and Veracruz number 2 for the trade show, a very limited supply of them. And then they're going to go into 25 or 20 count boxes after that. This is a whole new version of Veracruz, which is a Corojo 99 shade grown wrapper in more of a Rosado Claro color grade. It's kind of hard to see, but it's super elegant. It's got a lot of sweetness from the Corojo. For me, it's right up my alley right now. Like, this is what's hitting me.
You know, one thing I noticed about you and a couple other manufacturers when it comes to, kind of new stuff, cigars you guys are all working on right now, noticing a lot of brands using Sumatra wrapper right now. Is that because of its over availability and under availability of a lot of other things? Is it just kind of with the tides? I mean, I know you've used it on the T110, you've used it on the Cohetes, you've used it on the Cojonu line. Some other manufacturers have some new releases with Sumatra in them. Is there a trend there?
I don't know if it's a trend. We've been using Sumatra on and off for a lot of years. I mean, when we were short on broadleaf, I started switching to other wrappers for the TA cigar. So in 2019, I did the San Andreas, and then in 2020, I did the Sumatra version. So for me, I've just been utilizing 4 different wrappers, kind of like shifting through them a lot in my lines, because they give great expressions to cigar blends. And it's a great teaching experience for people to try the same cigar with different wrappers, because they get an idea of how much the wrapper does affect the flavor profile. So you'll see me using a lot of Sumatra, a lot of broadleaf, a lot of San Andreas, and of course a lot of Habano from Ecuador. What you're going to see me use more moving forward, and I've started using it more, is Corojo, because the Garcias have been growing Corojo now for a few years, and we've been able to use the crops from the Corojo 99 shade grown on a few projects, including, like, they use it on Fonseca, but I also use it on the Escasos that we make out of Miami. So yeah, I'm just moving through wrappers that we have a good supply of, and that I know that we can put out a whole release of. There was a time where I actually avoided Sumatra because the seed that the grower was using had, I don't know, altered itself, and something happened where the crop that came out that following or that year was kind of horrible. It didn't taste like Sumatra, didn't look like Sumatra, and eventually they corrected the problem, and the seed the next few years turned out to be perfect. But there was one year you wouldn't recognize the tobacco at all for Sumatra. So why is everybody using Sumatra? Is it a trend? I don't know. Maybe.
No, it's just
you'll see me shifting a lot though.
It's just an observation I've made just recently, and I talked about it with some people last week when we were at TPE, and some of those manufacturers are using it's really abundant right now and it's cheaper. We're using it. Blah 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 blah. So I just was curious. I'd ask someone like yourself.
Sumatra, Ecuador, I wouldn't say it's that much cheaper. I mean, anything right now everything's gone up. Everything's gone up. But I wouldn't say Sumatra is that much less than other things. Like if you look at Habano or Sumatra from the same supplier, I don't see much of a difference in price.
Yeah, like I said, I was just curious to get your take on it. I know you do use it. But speaking of TPE,
yeah,
Nicole and I were there last week. So hello,
I'm still
everyone.
Tired.
We are
and
back.
I was not.
And Tatuaje was not there, which is a shame, only because we always love to see Pete. So he was not there to party with us. And I will say,
it looked like a good time.
The industry party. Like, I got to recap this, and if you watched How About That Cigar on Monday night, Garrett and Matt definitely brought this up. I listened to the show. Yeah. The cover band that they had for that industry party was off the chain. Like, off the chain. They played everything from, 80s, 90s. They had Alice in Chains, they had Guns N' Roses. They finished the show with 9 Inch Nails, and then our personal favorite, Rage Against the Machine. It was
nice.
It was intense.
And we were in the front row.
We started moshing with How About That Cigar? Our friends Kevin and Barbara were down there. I think they started to back away. They were getting concerned about getting roped into that. I think Zane from Blind Man's was down there too.
It was a media mosh pit.
Oh yeah, it was literally a media mosh pit, and it was insane. It was insane. No, it was a wild time. But the trade show itself was good. It was very busy. The first hour, the first day, seemed real quiet during the media hour. But then once they let everyone in, I mean, it was packed, and I didn't anticipate it being as packed as it was. So I mean, we kind of were thrown off our game a little bit. Like, oh shit, we got to make some adjustments. There's a lot more people than I anticipated. Plus, there's a shorter window. The first day opened up at noon. Then you have a full day the second day. Last day closes at 4. Versus, PCA, you got 3.5 days. You kind of have 2 3/4 with TPE. So a lot of ground to cover. I would say a lot of manufacturers were there. Obviously, Tatuaje wasn't there. Some other big companies my father wasn't there. Toro Fuente wasn't there.
Nope.
But Ashton was not there.
Ashton was not there.
Nope.
So on the topic, and since you happen to be here, today,
why?
Why did Tatuaje not attend TPE?
No, I mean it wasn't like a boycott or anything. That's for sure. We're not into boycotting shows. It was not a great time of the year for us because we had a lot of other things going on. That's one big answer for it. I was in Nicaragua with my brother and Dan from Surrogates, working. We really didn't have the time to get ready for a TPE, knowing that we had just come out of a few things like the TA in October, and knowing that we didn't have enough product to really go in to do anything. We were going to be there just shaking hands and saying hi to people and thanking them for being customers. I will say this. I do have, again, it's not a boycott, but I do have a question mark in my head about the TPA, and it's always been there, about how it is a trade show that is owned by one individual company, but marketed as a trade show. And I made this joke earlier that if the PCA was owned by, let's say, general cigar.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be weird for a lot of people.
Well, I think that the biggest component, and we talk about this all the time. PCA at its core, I mean, it's still it's an organization that raises money for legislation and cigar industry protection and a lot of the stuff that they do down in Washington, to help support the premium cigar and the pipe industry. And that's kind of the main purpose. I mean, there's other things they do too, and yes, I mean the trade show, it's a time to do business and get together. It's hosting an event for people to do business, but at its core, it goes towards something that matters. And Pete, I know that you are a huge supporter of PCA. I mean, during the pandemic, you donated $10,000 to the PCA, just to almost literally help them keep the lights on, because they were struggling at that time, and then a few other people did as well. TPE, like you said, I mean, TPE is owned by a larger company, where it's kind of going into a more of a profit margin, as a result of the show.
Yeah, I suppose that could change. My opinion on it could easily change if I saw that the people that do own TPE came out and donated a ton of money to the CRA or something to keep the defense fund against what we're fighting against constantly in check. Like it'd be nice to have that money coming in, knowing that we can count on it. So if the TPE came in and said, hey, we're going to donate X amount of dollars to the CRA, knowing that the CRA needs the money to keep on fighting what we're fighting, I would instantly have a different opinion on it. But that's my plain simple opinion, which is
You look like you're going to say something.
I want. Yeah, I know Nicole's going to say something, but I wanted to just for the sheer sake of seeing people. That I wanted to be there for it.
Absolutely.
Jose and my brother, Jose Ortega from my father, my brother and Dan, we all had the conversation. It would have been cool to see people, but we didn't have anything to go to the show with. We didn't have new projects that were, selling. We were just shipping the cohetes at the time too. So that was another wave of work that my office got inundated with. We didn't have any product to ship. Otherwise, we couldn't go in with a deal. There was no options for us to do much of anything other than shaking hands. And because of the timeline and all the things that were going on with the holidays, we realized that we just didn't have the ability to be there.
Right. What were you going to say, Nicole?
Well, I was just going to say off topic, I'm interested to see the financials of actually like how many cigar manufacturers went and attended compared to the other types of tobacco there and tobacco products, and then also what the growth was year over year from TPE last year.
Yeah, I guess that's interesting too. That's interesting.
Well, I mean, that's another thing I don't know. I don't know the financials of the TPE.
Yeah. No, and
if I had to guess, they're probably not making much money off the show.
Yep.
Only because there is a lot of work that goes into putting something like this together, and most of the time, trade shows that essentially lose money. I would say there was a lot more cigar manufacturers there this year. I saw that the floor was much bigger based on your videos I was watching. Yeah, I was stalking you on Facebook to see what was going on in the TPE.
That's fine.
I feel like a lot of
that's why we're here.
No, but I was watching Dojo too to see what was going on over there. Yeah. It was nice to see people out and about, and that's the part that we miss. That's the big regret, is not being there just to hang out with people. But at the same time, there were priorities in our office that I knew that we had to take care of, that there was like no way could I even imagine going to Vegas. And on top of it, I had just gotten over COVID.
That's right. Because you were actually on with Coop not that long ago, and I think you had COVID on that show.
Yeah.
Which, it's funny that we bring that up. That was a great episode. And, I found there was a lot of good stuff that you guys covered and a lot of good topics that you guys covered, especially with like trademarks and all that.
Yeah.
I found that to be very informative, even just kind of like on the not so cigar specific side, just kind of more on the back end of the business side. Um, and I'm gonna kind of tie that in with our news segment, which I think we're gonna hit that now because I want to kind of segue into this kind of thing. And Pete, I think you'll kind of know where I'm going with this once I bring it up.
All right, so cigar industry news brought to you by McAuliffe Cigars. In terms of brackets, brackets are done. You cannot fill them out anymore, but you can still vote on your favorite McAuliffe cigars for McAuliffe Madness. All right, what's the news?
So, speaking of PCA, earlier this week they sent out a letter to all of us and the members of the Premium Cigar Association. PCA calls out characters, foods, and candy associated with children's interests in responsible marketing statement. Basically, kind of talking about some of the products out there and the way that they are marketed. Obviously, a lot of manufacturers and Pete, I mean, you've been known to do this too. Not, I don't think as directly as others. I would say, specifically with your Monster series. But some people kind of go a little bit extra with it in the way that they market some of these products. And,
Like actual children's characters, like
yeah,
actual.
Another piece of this I'll bring up, since Pete is here. If anyone saw the movie Hand Rolled, this was a huge part of that movie too, that was talked about, the whole marketing tobacco towards kids. And, when you see people come out with a cigar that's, like Punch does with the can of soup, or, some of the other, like the bento box, the Chinese box of like food, but it's cigars. That's where I think some people in the industry, and I think the point being, you have this.
I don't.
No, go ahead, Pete.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Pete.
I don't know. I don't look at I don't look at the food part being, especially like if you went towards the theme of Chinese food. I don't think that's like catering to kids. If you came out with like a bubblegum flavored cigar, or a cigar that looks like a pack of Hubba Bubba, then I would say yes, or even a box of cigars that looks like a Snickers bar. I would say yes.
Now,
but the food thing, I have to give that a pass. I don't know. That's just because I've done food. I've done food in the past, and I didn't really think of it as like, oh my God, this is a kid's item.
No, and same, like there's Red Meat Lovers Club.
Right.
Saka makes the polpetta. There's so many other ones too. I have the same thoughts. I mean, the food I feel like is okay.
I would agree with that. Like now, for example, if you go the other way.
If you went for strawberry shortcake packaging, maybe
Barbie, like.
Now, what about there's been some companies, and I won't really mention names because it's really not to put them on the spot. It's just as an example. But there's been cigars that come out that were literally called the Cookie Monster, and the band was a blue with the big eyes on it with the cookie on it.
In the person's defense that made that cigar, I had a conversation with that person, and the cigar was called the Cookie. It was never supposed to be called the Cookie Monster. He explained that to me.
Right.
Because I had a problem with the word monster attached to it. So the way that the retailers marketed the cigar was as the Cookie Monster, and the person who came up with that cigar did not call it the Cookie Monster. He called it the Cookie, and he explained that to me. And I would have to blame the retailers for adding that extra word on it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a topic that does come up, and I know Coop feels really strongly about this too. It's something he brings up from time to time.
But also the large.
Matt, real quick. We all know what the character comes from, though.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
The character is the Cookie Monster, but he did not specifically call it the Cookie Monster. Let's just say that.
Like even if you look at the Monster series, right? I know you've done a really good job of the Frank, the Chuck, the Tiff. You don't full out really use those character names. And this is kind of where that other conversation that I mentioned before was really interesting in the way that, like with the trademarks that kind of happened, and I remember you saying when it came to those, you're not really using the names, you're using variations of the names, you're not using any names that are trademarked by a studio, with the exception of, I know you had mentioned you used
Like Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde's a perfect example because they're kind of public domain.
yeah.
But to be honest, I'm I'm gonna be like moving forward. I've had a conversation with my brother and Dan from Surrogates, and we're just gonna be even more ambiguous about it, and be very, very basic when it comes to branding these items. Because do I need to have it called any of those names? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about the imagery, and that's it. I don't think I need to have it be called the Frank anymore. I think people know that it's based off of that character, and it could easily just have been a green box without any image on the box at all.
Right.
And called it the F Redux, and people would have said, "Oh shit!"
Right.
So I've always treaded lightly, but I plan to tread even more lightly moving forward.
Now another thing.
Just because, like I don't want to run into issues. Obviously.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I know that I was just gonna say one of the other issues that you actually have had is that you have been you've been sued or attempted to be sued by Monster Beverage over the use of
Well,
the
that
name
was a
Monster.
cease and desist over the name
Oh,
Monster.
that's right. I'm sorry. Cease and desist.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten a lot of cease and desists over the years. That was one of them, and that ended up turning into a whole conversation about the color green, because they knew they had no recourse on the name, because I owned the trademark and I had owned it for a long period of time, and it's in two different classes of goods. But Monster Energy has always been, that company that goes after everybody. They've always been that company. So when they sent me a letter, I was blown away, because it'd been like 10 years that I've been doing the Monsters, and then all of a sudden I got a letter from Monster Energy. But I was really annoyed by it also, like kind of like a go fuck yourself moment. Like, no way, you guys are wrong, and you're just being a bully right now because you have no case. But it ended up they ended up dwindling down everything to a color. Then they started focusing on a lime green, and they don't want me to use lime green in association with the word monster. And I'll be honest, I went straight back and said, okay, I don't need to call anything with a lime green band monster. I'll just call it Tatuaje, because that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, all these cigars are Tatuajes. I don't need to put anything else on the band but Tatuaje. It's really about, when people see a olive green band, they're going to think of Frank. If they see an olive, a lime green band, they're going to think of Hyde. If they see a gray band, they're going to think of Mummy. So I don't really need anything else on those bands other than that. Because again, we're in the Redux series. Like, this is like.
Are you gonna flash?
Well, he's talking about it. I figured it would help to have the visuals, since I do still have the full set. I do need to start smoking them.
These already have the visuals, and like, if you look at those bands in those boxes, none of them have anything but Tatuaje and the Fleur de Lis. That's it.
Right.
There's no Monster series on the band. There's no anything on the band. It's purely a color and the word Tatuaje.
Yeah, I wanted to bring this up regardless, because it was kind of a bigger topic this week in the news. But I knew that you had talked on similar subjects with this previously, like as I mentioned with Coop, and I just found it to be a good conversation. I figured I was interested to get your opinion on it.
Well, Matthew, real quick, so I'll jump in. You remember my Little Monsters?
The Skinny Monsters?
No, the Little Monsters, the first ones. These go back all the way to 2012.
No, I don't remember those.
Okay, so the Little Monsters.
I wasn't smoking yet.
The Little Monsters box was orange, and it had like a silk screen on the top that said Little Monsters. Originally, on the top of the box, we literally had the characters of each monster, kind of like baby versions of them that we had an artist draw in a chain. So we had Frank, Drac, Face, Wolf, and Mummy. kind of like walking along with each other. And I looked at the image and I said, it looks a little too young. It looks a little too like cartoonish, and I don't want anybody that is looking at that box to assume that it's something else. So I actually changed the artwork for the cover of the box, and I put that image of them walking along in a trail inside the box so you couldn't see them. Actually, inside the box below the cigars. So you would have had to have bought the box. You had to have been an adult to buy the box, and that's the only way you'd be able to see that image. I also put on the top of the box that they were for adult purposes only. You must be a certain age to purchase them. Because even back then, I was super aware of like, okay, maybe this is going towards a different direction that I don't want to even go towards. That was 4 years before the FDA came involved. But I was always cautious of not trying to promote to kids.
Right.
Because that's not what cigars were originally.
Right. And, when we talk about it all the time, is not giving the FDA or any kind of regulation branch of the government, usually the FDA, though, any kind of leverage over, oh, hey, look, they're marketing towards kids. Oh, they're using, children's imagery with tobacco products. And then all of a sudden you give them, they have a little bit of that and they turn it into this whole thing of, well, they're trying to go after kids with this. And so.
And let's enforce plain packaging, which no one wants.
Yeah. Forget about the FDA.
Yeah.
Think about just any congressman or senator that says, well, I saw that box of yours and seems like the cigar business is promoting towards kids, so I'm not going to support the bill that you want me to support.
And I bring up another topic, which I don't think Matt likes when I bring this up, but, let's look at the marijuana industry, shall we? And legal dispensaries who have chocolate bars. So having a cigar with a cartoon character next to a pot chocolate bar or candy, what is the child going to grab? It's not going to be the cigar. It's going to be the chocolate. And which one is condemned more? The cigar.
No, yeah, absolutely. And we all go back to the defense of you can't buy these. Like you can't, a kid cannot go into a cigar store and buy cigars. That's plain and simple. There's another reason why I've never advertised my monsters, because I don't think I need to, because it's not one of those brands that I need to advertise. It's not really the staple of our brand. The staple of our brand is our core lines. And those are the ones I want to advertise. But I also don't want to put anything out there that might be tempting for a younger generation that's not old enough to purchase products that we sell.
Right.
So, listen, I live in a house with 3 young boys. One of them's 1 year away from turning 21, but the other 2 are under 18. And they live in the cigar world. They see it right in front of them. They don't smoke. Like, they don't even want to smoke. They just know that mom and dad, that's what they do for a living. There's nothing.
They have no interest whatsoever.
I mean, when it comes to the family, you always hope that everybody wants to work for the family business.
Right.
But the reality is they all need to find their spot, and they can't just walk into it like they own the place.
Yeah.
So every kid in this household and my brother-in-law's household, they all start from ground zero. They just don't walk into a sales position the first day. They're the receptionists at the office.
Got to work.
Or they're in the warehouse packing boxes. Like there are no free rides, because
that's the way it should be, though.
Because this family here, forget about me. I'm a piece of shit. But this family here, the Garcia family, they came from nothing. They worked really hard to build something. And I'll be the first guy in the room that smacks one of those kids that says, "Oh, I want to be the next vice president of my father's cigars." I'm like, go pack some boxes for about a year and I'll talk to you later.
No, I mean it's true, and that's the way it should be. Working your way up the ranks and earning your position is definitely it's the way. It's the old school way, and it builds character too. We have a question from our friend Mark in the chat. How many releases does Pete have planned for that Corojo 99 wrapper, or is the Veracruz the only one?
Well, so the escassos that we make in Miami that are on hiatus right now because we're trying to find time to put a roller on making them. Those are made with the Corojo. The Veracruz will actually be the first full line release in Nicaragua from me or from Tatuaje. But the Fonseca product that my father family makes utilizes that same wrapper.
Interesting. Is that a question right there? Sorry. Is that for Pete? I think that's for Pete.
Yes.
We have a question from Tim doing Tampa Cigar Week. I think that's for you.
Tampa Cigar Week. When is that?
Isn't that December?
Well, isn't it Ybor City Heritage?
Oh, the Heritage Festival.
Yeah, the Heritage Festival. First.
Yeah, I couldn't do it this year because I was actually I decided to take a vacation for my birthday to Italy, so I could not do it.
Wow.
I know.
Where'd you go in Italy?
I know. Now
we went to Rome, Florence, Maranello, Modena, and back to Rome.
Wow. So you really covered some.
So it was actually a really quick trip, but it was really focused on things that we never thought we'd be able to do again. Like having a dinner at one of Massimo Bottura's restaurants. If you know who he is, he's episode 1 on Chef's Table.
Do you know that one?
He's a 3-star Michelin chef. If you watch Chef's Table, he's episode 1.
Okay.
What's
season 1, episode 1. Massimo Bottura.
See, the name Massimo sounds familiar.
And we like our food, so we're gonna have to look into
Oh
this.
no, trust me, and he's a character. You would love this guy. The passion that he has for what he does is obnoxious. And then I through a friend that worked for a car magazine, he got me into the Ferrari factory just to see what they do.
Wow.
And I'll say this: there's 2 factories in the world that I know that I would eat off the floor. It's the Ferrari factory and the My Father factory.
Wow. What I mean, the Ferrari factory, that's got to be... I just pictured them assembling engines with white gloves on.
Yeah, that's what they were doing. No, and the sad part is we weren't allowed to take any type of pictures. Like once we were on the property, we couldn't take any pictures. And I was just thrilled to see it because I knew from a standpoint of, manufacturing, I looked at my wife and I said, your brother would freak out by seeing this stuff here because it's so clean. It's so organized. Like it's one of those most beautiful places in the world that if you think about manufacturing things, I'm sure where they build like Apple products might be as clean. I don't know.
Porsche.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure.
Her brother used to work for Porsche.
Yeah, he was a mechanic, and he's like even just a regular, their regular shop, air conditioned, beautiful,
clean, like sterile.
Immaculately clean.
They flew him down to the Porsche, the U.S. headquarters for their racing division down in Georgia.
Yep.
And he was
that's awesome.
He's like, you wouldn't believe the kind of facility that they have there, just for their performance division. They have all their own private racetracks and. It's a whole thing, and he's like, yeah, I mean, it's top notch, and he was like, it's probably one of the best shops I ever worked at.
Yeah. I could imagine any of those high-end luxury things, but it was funny because we were watching Formula One, F1 on Netflix, and we were kind of rewatching this year or the last season because the new season's coming, and they were at the Aston Martin factory, and Aston Martin, obviously an expensive car.
Yeah.
And my wife even said, she goes, they got nothing on the Ferrari factory.
Yeah.
The Ferrari factory was that immaculate. You're just like, come on, this is not possible.
Did it change your view on like Ferrari as the car and as the brand, like for the money? Like, you know what? Now I can see why it fetches what it does.
Yeah, I mean, but honestly, I would love to go see another high-end car factory, like maybe Lamborghini or something, just to see really how they do it, to see if there's a comparison.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, I have a lot of respect for that car brand. I have a lot of respect for the history of the brand. I kind of went down on the deep dive early in the pandemic on things like that, and started watching all these documentary films about these companies. And there's a lot of cool history behind Ferrari, and obviously its interaction with Ford, which was really interesting.
Yeah.
They made a movie about it.
Yeah, the Ford versus Ferrari is what Pete's talking about if you haven't seen it. I am a Ford guy, I'm a Mustang guy, I'm a Shelby guy. So for me it was like, oh wow, and to see that story unfold with Ford, attempts to buy Ferrari, and then they kind of turn around and I think he sold to Fiat, and then Ford turns around and is like, all right, well, we're going to beat you in Le Mans, and that's just the end of that, and they did. They had three GT40s roll across the finish line, and Ferrari, I don't even think finished that race, if I remember correctly.
I knew you were a Shelby fan. They didn't finish that race, but I knew you were a Shelby fan because you toured the Shelby place in Vegas.
That's right.
I watched your Facebook footage on that.
That's
and
right.
My nephew has a GT5. Was it GT500? Right?
Yes.
Yeah, he has a GT500 that's absolutely gorgeous, beautiful, and he didn't come to the trade show in Vegas with us in the summer, because he was in school. And I told him, I said, you missed out because there's a Shelby place in Vegas that you would have died over.
Well, that's the main factory where all the Shelby vehicles are made. So and then all the old cars are there too. So like all of the original, the Mustangs, the Cobras, some of the old GT40s are there. I think the original one is there, if I remember correctly too, from the movie.
It was there.
Yeah, on display.
So that's cool as shit. That's awesome.
And then you can just look out into the warehouse where they're assembling the cars.
Yep.
Which is really awesome. Lot of history there. And we actually, at the time, we had rented, when we were in Vegas, we rented a GT350. And we were driving around, and I had been there before, and I wanted to go again because she hadn't been there, and so we took that there. And that was cool. And then the last time I was in Vegas, they had done a special edition for a rental car company. I think it was 6 rental car company, and they came out with like 20 of these special Shelby GTs. They were black and orange. And I remember I read about it in a magazine, and they said they were only going to be available in LA, Las Vegas, and parts of Florida like Miami, Orlando. And I was like, oh, I'm going to Vegas this summer too. This was, I think, 2019. And I had tried to reserve one, and they're like, no, you can't reserve it over the phone and whatever. And I was like, whatever. It's probably impossible to get. Well, I landed at McCarran, and I had a rental car that I had rented, and I picked it up, and I drove out, and there's that rental car place, and one of them's sitting out front. And I was like, huh. So I pulled in, and I just walked in, and I said, is that new Shelby? Like, oh yeah, we just got it like last week. I was like, can I take it? Is it like, yeah? You have a credit card? I'm like, yeah. They're like, yeah, you can take it. I said, hold on one sec. Here's my credit card. And I left my credit card there. I went back to the airport. I went back to Enterprise, and I was like, you know what? I just tried to play it up. I was like, this is not what I wanted, and I'm just gonna Uber around, and like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, is something wrong? I'm like, it's my experience. Don't worry about it. Just leave the car. We'll cancel it for you. No worries. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I walked my ass across the street, and I picked up a Shelby, and I drove that around for 3 days. And I took that to Shelby American, and I went in the front door, and there was a receptionist, and I said, hey, I have one of the special, the rentals that you guys made. And she didn't understand me at first. And I was like, for the rental car company, the new ones. And she was like, oh, really? You have one? I was like, yeah, it's outside. She's like, I didn't know they were back in town. They shipped them all to Florida. And I was like, I have one outside. And she like came outside, and she's like, oh, no way. And she's like, yeah, if you want, you can move those cones, and you can pull it right up in front of the building and take all the photos you want. And I was like, all right.
Awesome.
So I did that too, which was really fun. So yeah, I mean, he should definitely go check that out. He would love that.
I have it took me a year and a half to get it, but I have a brand new first edition Bronco two-door sitting in the driveway, which is proudly made in the United States, which I was really happy when I saw the sticker in the window that it was made here in the United States.
Nicole wants a Bronco.
I do really
She
want
wants
one.
like a mean Bronco too, like with a
Well,
lift.
the two-door. See, to me, Broncos are not four doors. There's no such thing as a four-door Bronco for me. That's just me being a snob. If you talk to an old school Bronco guy, they'll tell you that this Bronco is the new fake Bronco. But it's a fun vehicle.
Yeah.
I have a whopping 100 miles on it so far.
She was looking at Jeeps like a few years ago, and then the Bronco came out, and a few weeks ago she's like, "Yeah, I don't know. I like the way that Bronco looks. It's pretty
It's
aggressive."
just different.
Yeah, and I
Well,
was like,
now they have a four-door only version of the what do they call it, a Bronco Raptor.
"Oh, no way."
But it's a four-door only, and it turns me off because, again,
Two-door.
I'm a
Two-door.
traditional Bronco guy, which is a two-door.
Nicole, do you want a two-door?
But I'm not hardcore like, oh my God, it's got to be old school or it's nothing.
I would have a two-door, but at the same time, if we have like, we're engaged, so if we have babies in the future, I need a four-door vehicle.
Yeah, you need
so
a mom. You need a mom,
I
mom
need
accessible. Yeah, that's
just
true.
being realistic.
She makes a good point. She makes a good point.
So-
That's true.
But it would be a badass Bronco.
The last time we were on, you guys were not engaged.
No,
True.
that's right.
And I actually thought you were like already engaged. I think I mentioned something about that on the show. Or I thought maybe you guys were already married, but then you guys got engaged at the trade show, right?
That's
That
right.
is true.
That's
Yeah.
right. You guys were all there. It was a great time. There's
Sorry.
two questions in the chat from our friend John. First question, is Pete going to TGS? Second question, can Pete explain the word vintage as it contains to both the cigar and wine?
Okay. Yeah. Am I going to TGS? I am supposed to be there.
Okay.
I am supposed to be there. So it's a good 95% yes.
All right.
There's always something that comes up with me, like where I can't make a trip because of personal reasons, but luckily it's right up the road from us, so it's easier. The word vintage. Well, in the cigar business, it's pure bullshit most of the time. In the wine industry, it actually means something. It actually means the vintage on the bottle. I have done a project in the past which I called a single farm vintage, which all the tobacco came from one farm. All the tobacco came from one vintage off that farm. So it was pure. That's why I called it la verite, which is the truth, the word, the truth, because everything about it was 100% true. The word vintage in the cigar business has always been a problem for me.
I feel like this question was really soft, Austin, to be here.
No, yeah, thank you, John, for asking this question, because I can't stand it. And usually people will throw the word vintage on something because they used a tobacco from 2006 and they called it vintage 2006 because one of the tobaccos was from 2006, but the rest of the cigar was from 2020. I will say that there are probably no true vintages aside from maybe, I think Lito Gomez does one. I don't know if he calls it a vintage though. I think he calls it something else, but he puts a year on it, and I think all the tobacco is designated from that year.
Is it the LG?
It might be the LG.
I think it's the LG.
I can't. If Carney's on watching, please jump in and correct us. But I think it's the LG.
Let's get our
And
LFD correspondent.
I've always had a lot of respect for Lido in that case, well, Lido because he's Lido, but that wins bonus points for me because Lido was always really straight and direct forward with what he put into the product. But yeah, vintage for me is, if you're going to put a vintage on something, if you say vintage or put a vintage year on something, make sure you tell why it's there. Be honest about it. I put years on Corojo News, but those only designate the year that the Corojo New came out.
Right.
Of that size, and we continue to make those Corojo News. It has nothing to do with the tobacco that's in the cigar. The blend is the blend. The blend changes, over the years based on trying to make sure that the Corojo New, 2003 always tastes like a Corojo New 2003, but we're not using 2003 tobacco. So the word vintage, though, if you're going to say vintage, 1996, it better be from 1996.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think that's a good assessment. And we've kind of talked a little bit about that subject, like on the Spare Note show, like kind of lightly, but never really like in depth explained it that way. And it's so true because, like with wine, like everyone's always comparing like tobacco and wine, right? Or cigars and wine. And, grapes and tobacco, they're both grown, they're both fermented, all that. But yeah, when you get down to vintage, it is a word that gets used. It gets put on the band, it gets put on the box. But it's not necessarily the same as it is with wine. Where wine, like you said, is, oh, now I got Carney. Hit me. I'm at dinner, but I'm here. This fucking guy, he's always ready to go. Can you type it out for him?
Yes.
Sorry. I can't type and talk at the same time, or it'll be...
Just ask him what cigar
Yep.
Does Lido make that is a true vintage.
I want to say it's the LG.
I think it's the LG also.
Yeah, I think it's the LG.
Because I think it all comes from that one farm, too.
Yes. And it's a small batch. I believe it's
Yeah.
the LG small batch. So I could see that being small production.
Yeah.
LG.
It's
Yeah,
LG.
it's the LG.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
See, I like that. But the reality is that no one's holding tobacco from 1996 that they're going to be able to make a whole cigar out of and call it vintage 1996.
Wasn't Davidoff doing that with the Oro Blanco? Wasn't that supposed to be like a super vintage? That's kind of why it's so pricey.
Yeah, but I think that's a blend of multiple things.
Yeah.
It might be vintage tobacco or old tobacco, but I would say old tobacco. But I think it's a blend of multiple years. Maybe they are using old tobacco, but it's a blend of multiple years,
So
and
it's
that's
not
why
one-
they decided. I don't think they said, "Hey, let's find every stitch of tobacco that we have from 1999." And those are the Oro Blancos moving forward.
Now, yeah, he
Because
says
obviously that's going to change eventually.
it's vintage crop 4 years prior to release date, is what he said.
See, that's awesome.
Yeah. So definitely a good point, and that's a great question, and because it does get talked about. And when you buy wine and you buy a Duckhorn Cabernet 2017, that's 2017 grapes.
Yeah.
You buy a vintage cigar from X, Y, and Z, whoever. There could be a leaf in there from 3 years ago, but the rest of it all was grown last year or 2 years ago. So it's not. I feel like it really is not the same in the cigar industry. There are a few exceptions like the LG, but for the most part, it doesn't really fall into that same category.
Again, a lot of times people use the word vintage because they have a tobacco leaf, one tobacco leaf in there that happens to be from X date, and that's where they say it's vintage, blah blah blah. I think it's a word that you have to be careful with. But the wine industry, it's pretty straightforward. There's no bullshit about it. Like, you get what you get.
Yeah, good point, good topic. One of the other things that I wanted to bring up with you is, and I messaged you this.
Oh, real quick though.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I have to make this point.
No, go ahead.
There's also, this is another reason why we date stamp all the boxes. And so people know that when they look at the bottom of a box and they see a date stamp on it, it doesn't mean the day we made the cigars. It means the day we packed the cigars. So the cigars could have been made a year earlier and eventually packed on this date, but there's a reason why we date stamp, just so people understand when they left the factory. It has nothing to do with the vintage, but at least they get an idea of like, okay, this tobacco or these cigars left the factory on this date, and I know that these cigars are from 2004 because the date stamp says 2004, but the cigars could have been rolled in 2003.
I wish more people did that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I mean, in the case of our humidors, like sometimes you're like, oh, where did this even come up? Like, where did we get this? What year?
Yeah, it's true.
It's an old Cuban thing. I just took it from them.
Yeah,
I think
that's a good point.
It's one of the things that when I started working with the Garcia family, that was the first thing that we did. And there's a couple other companies that have adopted that same thing, which I think is helpful for the consumers, because they turn over their box and go, oh, I got a box from 2007. That's awesome.
Yeah, one of the things you see a lot when people post boxes of Cuban cigars, they always like to show the date on the bottom of the box. Oh, these are April 2018. To show the age usually too, that especially when it's from a few years ago, the cigar's been sitting around on the box. But yeah, no, it's true, and not everyone does that. I know you guys do it, and the Cuban brands do it, and there's other people that do it, but not everyone does it. I feel like it's not on every box. But that's an interesting point to make, because I think there is a misconception. Oh yeah, these cigars are from blah 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 blah. That's why the date is here. Not that's
there's another
packed.
thing. Another thing that's helpful for the dates. There are people that follow like specific timelines, and they go, oh wow, man, like August 2006. Buy that year for Corojo New, August 2006. That's the one to get, right?
Right.
So there are people that follow that because it happened to be a great batch that came through. Even though we try to make every batch the same, maybe that batch in particular was like just on par with the best of the batches that we made, right?
Mm-hmm.
This happened to me where it was actually August 2005. I had a client call me and said, hey, do you have any more August 2005 Corojo New 03s? And I told him, I said, no, I have September 2005. He goes, no, I have to have August. And I told him, I said, August is only the date stamp that it left the factory, but the production is continual. And I'm going to guess that the stuff that's in September, probably the same.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen that myself a lot, especially, we talked a little bit before the show, and people are always trading cigars too. People are always getting into that too, and like, oh, well, I have this, but it's from this year though, and people, it's especially on the more limited stuff too. You see people get more into the ages and the actual dates and stuff like that, and like you said, they do keep track of it. I think those are great points too. It's something I should probably bring up with Coop on the other show. I feel like we could get into that. Never really thought of that topic, to be honest with you. I'm really glad that question got asked.
And also, I'm wondering too, as like more companies roll out with like QR codes and stuff like that on cigars, if that's something that they can.
Well, yeah, I mean,
to.
kind of like what Plasencia is doing.
Yeah, I mean, just utilizing that QR code for more than just information on the actual, just like the paragraph and whatever they're talking about, but like for
the
dating,
smart bands, yeah. Pete, I don't know if you saw that some of the cigars coming out with the smart bands.
Oh, actually, Mike Kirklots is using that, right?
Is he using that? I know Plasencia is using it on some of their lines.
He might have it in the works. I don't think they have it there, but we've talked to many manufacturers
I thought for some reason that Michael was using that. Maybe it's not on the bands, but I thought it was something to do with the box.
Yeah, some people are doing the box.
Yeah, so
that's true.
I think we're gonna see more of that, but it'll be interesting just how that information plays out.
This is another. So,
Oh yeah.
sorry, I was just trying to read that. So if the date stamp on the box is maybe 1 to 2 years from when it was rolled to when it was shipped to retailers, doesn't it change the profile of the cigar as to when it was originally blended?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I'll give you a good example. We made cigars in 2019. I packed them a year later in 2020. They were supposed to be shipped in 2021, but when we packed them in 2020, we date stamped them December 2020 when we packed them. I was going to ship them in December 2021. I've decided to hold them maybe until 2023. So you're going to see a date stamp on the box that says 2021, or 2020, but know that the cigars were actually made in 2019. There's a lot of times that, when most cigars in our industry can usually get made and be put out within 6 months of them being made, right? There's some cigars that we make in Miami that sit for over a year before we put them in boxes. But there are some cigars that we make in Nicaragua that sit in the cold room for 3 months before we box them.
Right. Yeah, and then of course, that's what you guys do. And then, if a retailer has that stock on hand for an extended period of time in their humidor, it's going to continue to age. You buy that box, and you're people like us who have more than we need to smoke. Some boxes sit around in your personal humidor. The cigars are just continuing to age. So, I mean, by the time you pick it up, let's say you bought that box, and after someone else held on to it, and, you held on to it for like 2 years, and then you find like, oh, let me grab one out of here. I forgot I had this box. It will continue to age and change from, when it was originally rolled. I would say, a huge part of it too is just, it's when you smoke it, and, whether you smoke it right away or at least on the consumer's end, in some people, there's some brands out there, and I won't mention any names because I don't want any misconceptions to happen, but there's some brands out there that, people prefer to buy and age themselves before they smoke them. And I know that you're aware of this too. Some people like to do their own aging. And
Absolutely.
They have their own kind of thing where, oh, well, I like this brand, but one time I let them sit for like 2 years because I forgot about them and they were great. So now I buy them and I sit on them and then I rotate in. So, yeah, when it comes to aging, I mean, it's not even just on the manufacturer side. Once a cigar is rolled until it's smoke, I mean, more or less, it does continue to age, as it sits.
I would say the best thing that you could do if you're a consumer and you're looking to buy cigars that you want to sit down on, buy them when they're first released. Like if we have a special edition cigar, or anybody has a special edition cigar, buy it when it's first released. Don't wait for 2 years to buy it because you don't know how it's been kept over the 2 years. It's kind of like wine. Like if the new vintage, let's say it's 2022 now, so let's say the 2020s are coming out in Bordeaux and on the streets, and we can get Bordeaux wines from 2020 already, or maybe 2019. It's better for you to go get it from the store now if you want to age it for a while from that store before it sits in someone else's wine cellar for 3 years, and you buy it 3 years later, and you don't know if that wine cellar went through temperature conditions that went up and down and fluctuated. So at least you have control over the way it was aged.
It's true.
Because again, everybody has their own process.
Nicole,
there's no rhyme or reason, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are variables, when it comes to cigars and tobacco, and like you mentioned, with the temperature change, humidity change, there's manufacturers out there that have like a 5-year age on their cigars. And during that time, they change the humidity and the temperature levels dramatically to allow the cigar to breathe. And and as you know, there's all different all techniques that people use. So, and all of those things will affect the cigar in some way due to those specific variables.
Is there a right and wrong of how wine, let's say wine or cigars, are supposed to be aged? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, the right and wrong lies in the person that's doing it themselves. because they have their own formula of how they like to do it. They like their cigars a certain way, and it's not up to anybody to tell them that they're doing it wrong. I believe there is a right and wrong, but if they like their product the way that they're aging it, then so be it. It's their choice.
Right.
Yeah.
Nicole, I wanted to check in on you because I think I don't know. It sounds to me like that cigar may be a little strong for you. I
So
don't
Matt
know.
just texted me during the because we didn't want to interrupt you, and he goes, "Are you okay?" And I go, "This is the first cigar in a long time that's kicked my ass."
Well, she was getting like
It's
really
been, like,
quiet, and I'm like, "Are you
like,
are you
long
all right?
time.
Is it something wrong?"
And
And then she's just like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine." She's like, "This cigar is kicking my ass," and I was like, "Oh, all right."
Sometimes it happens. Doesn't happen every time, so sometimes it happens. But I did want to circle back super quick too, because our buddy Mark in the audience did say that Michael Herklatz is using that technology, and then I quickly looked it up, and so he is using that NFC chip to allow consumers to scan the packaging. Someone else
that's
also
right.
chimed in who said they would love QR codes on boxes. And, you know, part of when I became a cigar smoker, I wanted to do a lot of research on like cigars, you know, what flavors as I was exploring. Sometimes you walk into these shops and they have no like information, just a box on a shelf. So I love that.
Like Tatuaje?
Well, no, I know. No, but
I'm sorry.
there's
I
so
couldn't help
many.
it. It was an easy one.
It is, but to be fair, there's
Softball
not a lot of
lobbed in.
there's not a lot of brands that do that, and you know some of them do have the shelf talkers, and the shop doesn't put out the shelf talker or whatever.
Or they cut them off.
They cut them off.
Right.
They don't like put the information, or they don't display it as it should be. And I'd love seeing more of that. I mean, people are wanting to know. So
Yeah, shelf stalkers. It's always been a tricky one for me because I tried to do some shelf stalkers early on, and then eventually I could never make it the way I really wanted to make it. I wanted to make these metal shelf talkers,
okay.
but there was really no way to put like information on the shelf talker. It was just okay. It's a shelf talker that has the brand name, so people know that that's the Tatuaje section.
Yeah. Well, and you're limited on
Information
space.
We're tough, yeah.
Space, cost, you don't know like what the setup is in a shop, right? If they even have the ability to showcase it the way you want it. Whereas like a QR code or a chip, bam, it's there. You design it.
Right.
I love it. I don't know.
I like that idea. I mean, there's a lot of things that we should implement that we're just really mom and pop about, really slow.
And I think that's something that's like really, really new. I really don't think it came around till like last year. So I'm sure as time goes on, more and more manufacturers will find a way to use it in their own way.
In different industries. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's
in
just
any industry,
beginning.
really, yeah. But it is interesting. When I first saw those, the first thing that I thought of is, people always talking about like, oh, are my Cubans real?
Yeah.
If Habanos ever found a way to integrate that into their packaging and they did it right, and there was a way that you could use that to authenticate your Cuban cigars. That's one use for them right there. So it is interesting technology, and it can be used in multiple different ways. And it will be interesting to see, kind of how it does evolve over time. And one thing I'll say about Tatuaje is, Pete, I know your stance on, kind of your whole theme with Tatuaje is the premise really from when you started the brand was you wanted that classic like Cuban feel to it, with not only the flavor and the strength of cigars, but even with the boxes. The boxes they're more that classic. They're not too flashy. They're that classic Cuban style box.
Old world for a new generation.
Right.
Are there things that we could do to make them stand out more? Absolutely. I mean, our focus since day one, and it's always been this way, is that we need the cigar to speak for itself. Are we behind the times with the way we package cigars? Probably. But I don't want to distract people with the packaging. I want the cigar to really prove itself.
The chat room is just really alive tonight. So sorry if I kind of go back and forth with the questions and whatnot too, Pete. I just want to make sure people get their questions covered. This is going to be probably the last question on blend stuff and the aging, just so we can kind of keep things
Yeah,
moving
yeah.
forward. But so are we saying, from John again, so are we saying that the original blend will not taste the same as what we receive?
Say that again.
So are we? I think this was, in response to some of the other stuff we were talking about with, the ages and the dates on the box and the vintages.
Yeah.
So are we saying that the original blend will not taste the same as what we receive? I think that's
No, no,
from at the time it was made in the factory to the time the consumer gets it.
And how it was
no.
stored,
But by the time the consumers get it in the stores, it's right where it needs to be.
Okay.
The aging process will just, I would say mellow it down, make it more approachable to a lot of people. That's why I always say that we make cigars that can be smoked fresh off the bench, but we know that they'll age gracefully over time. The blend doesn't change. The profile of how you're enjoying the cigar will change, obviously, because there's parts of the cigar that things happen to that cigar over time. If you get it from the store and you age it the way you age it, if you manage to mess it up, then yeah, it's going to taste probably pretty bad. But a lot of people over humidify their cigars, and it ends up you start getting it really musty in the flavor. Some people dry box their cigars for too long, and the cigars end up being a little too dry tasting, or even smoke hotter. Or here's another good concept: the oils in the wrapper that were there from the beginning have dissipated because someone took the moisture out too long, and that wrapper started to get less, for lack of better words, less greasy looking or less oily looking.
Right.
Those oils will eventually, go away slowly, but there are ways to ruin a cigar quickly.
And those oils play a huge part in the original blending of the cigar to begin with.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, these are not added oils; these are natural,
right.
natural for the wrapper. We're not talking about additives or anything like that. So in a true cigar, as long as you have your formula and how you want to age your product, I think you're going to get a pretty true experience of what the blend was originally at. Now it's just older, and it will mellow out the harsh edges.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to explain it. Another question here, and I think this is a question on is there a chance to see more? Hey Pete, this is from David. Hey Pete, I would really like to see more of Don Jose and Jaime. Is there any chance on an interview, even in Spanish?
I can't say no, but if you talk to my good friend Jose Ortega from My Father Cigars, he would love to see them on more, interviews and be more accessible. But the language barrier is a problem. And, Pepin and Jaime have been on a few interviews. My wife, obviously, she speaks both languages really well. So she's been on a few. I would say you're going to see her first more than you'll see Pepin or Jaime only because of the language barrier. Right. And trust me, the amount of knowledge they could spill out in 20 minutes is amazing. It might get translated wrong.
I mean, hey, someone could pre-record and do the typing. Sorry, they could do the pre-recording and then type it up too, and caption it. That goes with
that's
it.
true.
If people are really interested, just food for thought.
Yeah, and I feel like there's definitely more of an interest in, those people who are more so back at the factory that you don't really get to see a lot of, and people are interested to hear what they have to say.
Yeah, I mean that's again the biggest reason why I did hand rolled, because the people that were speaking Spanish in that documentary, there was no script for them. They got asked a question, they answered the question, and they answered it in their own language. So the translation ended up working out great. there was no like wall up between them and the camera. They answered what they believed in. So I would I would love to see Pepin and Jaime do more, but obviously they're super busy, and I'm thankful that they keep as busy as they do, because it makes my job look easy.
Yeah, I mean, since you bring up hand rolled, I mean that's kind of where I wanted to go with, in the second half of the show. And I've told you this, I've watched the movie probably about a dozen times now, and I'm one of those people where I will rewatch things over and over, because every time you do, you pick up on something else, you learn something different. You don't really absorb everything in one viewing or listening. And it is a great movie. And if you are a cigar smoker, you should watch that movie. It's available, I think, almost everywhere. I got it on iTunes, so I mean it's out there. You can get it. If you're not a cigar smoker, not that there's probably that many of them watching right now or listening, but hey, you never know. But if you're not a cigar smoker, I would still heavily encourage you to watch that movie, because I think it also does a great job of explaining to the non-cigar smokers what makes this industry not only special,
Thank you.
but
I appreciate
also
that.
it explains, like, hey, like what we're doing is an art form, or not me, you or the
No,
Garcias. It's an art form, and it's not the same as big tobacco. It's not even close. It's not even, yeah, tobacco, but it's really different. And the premium cigar industry is not the big bad bully that Philip Morris is. Of Marlboro cigarettes. It's not the same thing. Different product, different tobaccos, different agenda, really. I really think that more people should see that movie, even from outside, because I think that it would maybe not everybody would agree, but maybe some people would go, you know what, those cigar people, yeah, maybe they're a little different. Maybe they're not so bad. Maybe they're not out there trying to attack people. Like, we're not out here trying to push, packs of cigarettes so you can just rip butts all day. It's a lifestyle. It's an art form in itself, and it's not a product that's gonna affect you physically the same
It's
way.
not an actual addiction.
Yeah, it's not an actual addiction. When we talk about having an addiction, it's just we just can't help it. When people like Tatuaje and Arturo Fuente are constantly putting out cool stuff, and we're like, well, I gotta have it. That's just out of a necessity to collect. That's not necessarily because I have to have a smoke. It's just like, wow, that's cool. I gotta have it because it's an awesome product. So I really do, and and I've talked to you about this a little bit before. Even outside of that, it was great to see. It tells the stories of a lot of these families that make cigars, like the Padron family, the Plasencia family, the Garcia family, and how they all came out of Cuba. They all came from Cuba. And they all left, and they had to start over, and the trials and tribulations that they went through just to be where they are. I mean, you walk into a cigar store and you see all these cigars, and you're like, wow, that's a popular brand. It's in every store. Blah blah blah. That wasn't easy. And like you talked about with the Garcias, they worked so hard to create what they do have from nothing. They had to leave Cuba with nothing and start over again.
I would say that no tobacco family. Listen, I didn't grow up in tobacco. I created a brand that I'm lucky that people actually enjoy. But there's no tobacco family out there that didn't struggle at one point in time. You got to remember, before Cigar Aficionado, Fuente was a mildly popular brand. It wasn't like the brand that we know it now.
Right.
Or it wasn't the brand that we saw in 1994 or 1995, which was crazy back then. In the late 80s and even up to the early 90s, they were, Cynthia was at shops all around the country, like trying to get people to buy the product. Padrones, Padron had another struggle. They had to deal with the Nicaraguan embargo that the U.S. had on Nicaragua, where they couldn't get Nicaraguan products into the United States, but they were able to make product in Honduras and sell it to the United States. So there was a there's struggles all over the platform, and I think the cigar industry has been through a ton of them. Brand owners like myself, we didn't have to struggle as much. Obviously, we didn't have to go through those hard times. We found a factory that we wanted to make our product, and we have product made. Do we struggle as business owners? Absolutely, but not the way these families did.
Yeah, I mean, I painted the way that movie kind of goes. It's in different segments of different things, and that I would say is one segment of it, of the families themselves, and kind of how they were back in Cuba, then they left, and then they had to start over, and then it was a new set of challenges all along the way to kind of get them to where they had to be. Um, the last like third of the movie, I would say, when it really gets into Cigar Aficionado, and how just Cigar Aficionado magazine alone changed the industry as well, and how it brought this new awareness to cigar smoking, and then there was celebrities involved, on the cover and in the issues they were being interviewed, and oh, I didn't know that celebrity that I like as a cigar smoker. I never would have guessed, and it brought that whole new awareness that partially, I would say, or a huge part of, really influenced the boom of the 90s, because it brought this whole new awareness of the cigar lifestyle, by making it a little more publicized, a little more known. One thing I picked out of that, and I wanted to ask you about, when you were telling your story of how Tatuaje came to be, and you were telling the story of how you first met Don Pepin,
Mm-hmm.
and you said, "Oh, this is the guy that I knew I wanted to make my cigar." And you in the movie, you had said that you had asked a friend or something about making a cigar, and that person said, "Oh, I have the guy for you." And then you said that's when Don Pepin walked in. But in the movie, it flashed a photo of you with Carlito and Don Carlos. Was it the Fuente family that connected you with?
No. I've been in the business for 29 years. So I was in the retail part, working for other people behind other people's counters, obviously. Never owned. I say in the documentary, I never owned my own business.
Right.
The only thing I owned when I was a kid was a paper route. But no, I just happened to. I immersed myself into the industry pretty early on because I found something that I loved more than the music industry that I came from. So I made sure I did exactly what you're doing. You're traveling to these shows. You're going to factories. You're really immersing yourself into this whole culture. I did that, and I always had that dream to have a cigar with my name on it. When I was on that trip with the Fuente family, that was Dominican Republic, 1996. They were the first family I asked, "Do you have room for another client?" And they were like, "Nah, we just don't have the room. Like, it's impossible." It was in the middle of the boom, so it was like not going to happen, right?
Right.
I'm actually glad I waited, because if I didn't wait, I would have probably never met the family, and I would have never met my now wife. Like, I think things are supposed to happen in the way they do happen, and like if I had been selling my own brand made by Fuente, I would have never met this family. I would have never met my new wife.
Right. In other words, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I picked up on that, and I was curious, because I don't know.
But yeah, they were the one. They were the first family I asked.
Really.
Yeah, there was. I saw a lot of people that week. Obviously, Lito was a friend. I saw him that week. He couldn't do it because he was overwhelmed. I met a guy by the name of Hochi Blanco. Back then, Hochi back then was not as well known as he is now. But he was making really good cigars. And someone asked me, like, "Hey, we're looking for a factory." This is obviously, I didn't have a brand back then, but someone had came to me and said, "Hey, we're looking for a factory to do this project for us. Where do you think you'd go?" right now with everybody so busy, I go, there's a guy named Hochi Blanco that would be great because he's making really cool products for himself that no one knows about. This goes back to 1996 though, so this is really early on.
And what's funny about that? You mentioned the Fuente family, Lito Gomez, Hochi Blanco. Those are all Dominican tobacco makers and growers and rollers. And you ended up going with the Garcia family, which predominantly grows everything out of Nicaragua. So back it was, and I know
it was a shift of time. You know, that's what it was. It was the shift in time. You know, you move forward. What would that be? 7 years since I attempted to do it the first time. I didn't really attempt to do it. I just looked for a manufacturer and realized I didn't really know enough about what I wanted.
Right.
And then by the time I met Pepin, he was only working with Nicaraguan tobacco. And we found a harmonious place within that realm. Could I do it in the Dominican? Probably, but I'm really happy where I am.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's safe to say. I mean, I probably wouldn't change Tatuaje. It turned out to be, what it is, and it's great. But it's just funny how you mentioned those, and your mind starts to wander into like, oh, where Tatuaje could have been. If one of those families had been, Tatuaje could have been a completely different brand. Maybe not completely, but not, certainly not what it is now. It was just interesting to pick up on that.
There was one very big company in the Dominican Republic that was willing to make me a cigar. And I mean, Hochi obviously had the ability to make me a cigar, very small production at the time, but there was one other company that offered their factory to make me a product that was going to be obviously a small production. But the problem is that they wanted to just give me a cigar that they were already making. And that was something I absolutely did not want. I actually wanted to be part of the process. And when I met the Garcias, the first cigar was made by Pepin for my palate. I didn't blend it. He put it together for my palate. And I said, yes, but the Tatuaje brand was actually the first cigar that they ever made for production before they even made their own product. So before Don Pepin Blue, before Vegas Cubanas, before El Rey de los Habanos, there was a thing called Tatuaje, which they had created for me. And then since then, obviously, the relationship is much broader and bigger, but I'm a lot more involved with what goes into my product than most people.
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely very hands-on, and you pay a lot of attention to the detail. I would say if I had to make another similarity, it would be someone like Steve Saka. I know is also very involved in his blends. I think he said it before. He's that guy he'll work on a blend. He'll go through 40 test blends, and he'll make something that goes to market, but he's still not happy with it, and he's still working on it.
No, let's say that. I'll disagree with that in one way. You have to be happy. You have to be absolutely 100% happy with that product that goes to market, because we as brand owners and people who create things, we have the luxury of just saying no. If we don't like something, then it never makes it to market. We have to find what we absolutely love. For us especially, we don't put anything to market unless we love it. So I would probably have to disagree with that path because there's no cigar that I go, I don't really like it, but I'm going to put it out anyways.
Right, and I don't think I meant it exactly that way. But it just kind of like that the concept being of you're always working on something, you're always paying attention to it. It's always like, this is good, how can we make something different, or how can we make it even better?
Absolutely.
It's just being so connected to it all the time.
Absolutely.
Which
and that way I thought is much different though, because we make a cigar because we absolutely love it, but we're always looking for the next best thing,
Right.
or the next option in our choices. Because I've said this multiple times, I look at cigars as like a food in a sense, where I go, okay, I wake up in the morning and I want steak and eggs, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and go, I want cereal, or the next day I wake up and I want oatmeal. Like, yeah, you have to have choices in life. I had a buddy of mine that only ate pizza. That's all he ate. Like, he didn't eat any other food other than pizza, and it was kind of annoying. I'm like, how do you wake up every day and go, I'm going to get my pizza for the day? Like, how do you do that? Like, for me, I have to have choices.
Yeah.
It's with everything in life. Like, if you walked into a restaurant and you had one thing on the menu, you'd be probably fishing for something to find that you absolutely wanted at that time. And if they only serve burgers, which a lot of places do, I know I'm going to go to that burger place because I want a burger. Yeah. I'm not going to go to the Italian store because I want a burger. I'm not going to the sub shop because I want pasta. No, I'm going to go to the Italian restaurant when I want to get good pasta. I'm going to go to the salad place when I want a salad. Like, that's why we always have to have choices in what we're enjoying, because if you don't have choices, it gets pretty boring.
Yeah. I don't mean to change the subject so quickly, but I did lose track of the time here. And we have to hit our last segment of the show. Our last segment is our top 3 segment, which is brought to you none other than Room 101 brands. I usually ad-lib this one every week because that's the way Maddie wants it. It fucks. I'll go with that one. That's what he says. If you caught our interview with him at TPE, it's watch the Smokin Tabacco show, eat your vegetables, and smoke Room 101.
We should just say that every time.
Yeah, I think we should.
That's a great ad.
It's funny. I'm trying to stay on course here. There's a lot that I wanted to cover with you, because there's a lot of good stuff. But really quickly, one thing about Matt Booth, that he has said and other people have said to me about him was, when he started coming into the industry, that you were kind of someone that was like similar to him, but that came before, that he kind of looked towards, that kind of, I feel like, gave him some inspiration.
Yeah, and I didn't like Matt when he first got in.
Right.
He's shared the story before.
Right.
Yeah.
Even Herklotz told us this story about his first IPC PR, and you were like, who's the fucking guy with the cameras over there? And he had to tell him, like, hey, listen, you gotta cut this out.
No, yeah, I wasn't a fan, but then we had mutual friends that said, hey, just sit down and have a conversation. You're gonna love them. And we ended up having a conversation at my office in Los Angeles, and I was like, okay, Matt's just a cool motherfucker. like I don't know, like, I get a little gun shy with new people. And I think it's really because I want them to prove themselves to the industry. Not to me so much, but to the industry. And I don't want people in this industry in it for the wrong reason.
Right.
That's
fair.
Because we saw too many people in the past that came in the industry that were in it for the quick buck, and they didn't bring any worth to the industry. And I'll be honest, where are those brands now? A lot of those brands that I have in my head that were kind of like in it for the wrong reason aren't here anymore.
They've come and gone.
Yeah, they've come and gone. And you got a guy like Matt who learned to truly love the industry and support the industry. And that's what I love about this industry, is people that really take the time to be part of it and not just be part of their wallet.
Right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Also, side note, there is, for most women, the greatest friendships start with, hey, you looked like a bitch and I'm a bitch too, and now we're friends. That's just what that
Or-
reminds me of. Like,
or let's get a glass of wine.
yeah, and then you end up like just being okay. Like I thought you were a bitch. I don't know, but anyway.
No,
I'll tell you, a lot of shit can be settled over a cigar, for sure. You sit down with someone and have that one mutual thing in common, and shoot the shit for a while, and then you realize, like, yeah, these people are good.
Yeah, and I think what you said is so true too, and I think a lot of people see that, and it's in people's everyday lives. It's in every industry, but especially the cigar industry being as tight knit that it is. When someone new comes in, it's like, well, who's that guy? Like, we have a small club here, everything's great. Like, I don't want to let you into the circle yet until I know if you're really here for the right reasons. And like you said, there have been people who weren't, and even on the media side too. We've talked about it before. There's some people who, they come to the trade shows just because they want to meet Pete Johnson and they want to get free samples
And trick or treat.
and that's it. They're not actually because they want to do the solid media journalism. They want the excuse to go to the trade shows and stuff. And so,
Well,
yeah.
I mean, I'm sure you got hazed a little bit when you first came in.
In the very beginning, but I think it's safe to say I've proved that I'm here to work and do the right thing.
No, which is awesome. You also had a great stepping stone with Carney too. Having Carney involved early on with you guys, that was a big endorsement.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because Carney's in it for the right reason. He works for a great company, and he's not going to support someone that's in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, and I'll always, I'll always give credit to John, and I'll always, thank him for being there because he has done so much for us, and he still does. So I'll never be able to repay him for that, and I am grateful for that because it really did help me, launch to where we are.
And even though he's not as actively on the show, whenever he wants to tune in, he has a spot. So
Oh
that's
yeah,
the
he
other thing.
always.
He has an open invitation.
It doesn't
for a
matter. It
Thursday
doesn't
night.
matter who the guest is.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what day it is. If he calls and says, "Hey, I want to come on tonight," you're on. He always has a place on the show, as he should, and he really deserves that. So, but I want to hit the top three.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make them. I know, right?
It took us a while. It took us a while to get there.
I know. It's been a journey, to say the least. I think cigars have been aged faster than that. So I try to make it different every week, but I try to find a way to make it a little specific to people too. With you, anyone who knows Tatuaje enough knows that, you make a lot of different cigars. You've done a lot of projects over the years. And I know that you're someone that always likes to create. You like to innovate. You like to work on new stuff. You always try to find out what can you do different. And in doing so, you've created a lot of unique projects. Out of all of the things that you've ever worked on, though, what were the 3 projects that either just kind of failed or maybe they just never even made it to fruition for whatever the reason was? That maybe you kind of always regretted, like, that was supposed to be a great project, but it just couldn't happen, or we couldn't get it to work, or you know what, we did it, and it just really wasn't well received, and it was disappointing because I thought it was going to kick ass.
Yeah, well, I have a lot of those. I mean, again, the things that don't hit par with us, they just don't get made, right?
Right.
So La Verite, which is my single farm vintage that I did, I did 2008, which was kind of like a shock to the system for the market. People were like kind of unsure what the whole deal was about it. 2009 came and actually proved to people that it was a cool thing. Then I was going to do 2010, and I couldn't settle on the blend. I had the bands made. Everything for the packaging was ready to go. And then I just realized that I wasn't happy with the cigar, so I canceled it. And when I canceled it, there was another friend of mine in the industry that said, don't like, he thought I was canceling it for the wrong reason. He thought I was canceling it because it wasn't well received. He goes, don't give up on this project because it actually means something and you should just push forward with it. And I told him, I said, no, I just couldn't come up with a blend that I was absolutely 100% on. So I decided to just postpone it. And the next one, of course, was 2013, which I was very happy about. But that's a project that I do every so often, and I really have to be dead on with like, yeah, that's it. So that's a tough one. La Riqueza was always one of those projects that we did that I thought was going to be gangbusters, and it just wasn't well received.
I like that word.
It just wasn't well received. So eventually during the broadleaf crunch multiple years ago, that's when I had to make the tough decision to say we're postponing La Riqueza for a while. And I actually had a whole humidor made, and I was going to do these little single like cardboard coffins that were going to go inside the humidor with the cigars, and it was a cool project. And I had basically shut down broadleaf completely.
Yeah,
because I knew I didn't have enough broadleaf to really do the project anyways. But the blend La Riqueza is still one of the family's favorites. And we all kind of, scratch our heads going, why didn't it work? But we're coming out with a new iteration of La Riqueza in about 4 to 6 weeks, I guess. But it was one size. It was something we showed at the trade show last year.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear because most people, they see what comes out and they see what comes on the shelf. They see what's popular. They see what everyone knows. But there's a lot that happens behind the scenes, and Coop likes to use the term, like pulling back the curtain. There's a lot that does happen back at the factory or back at the office that you don't see. That stuff that maybe it does sound cool. It does sound, oh, I want to try that, but it just never happened or it never made it to fruition. And every manufacturer and cigar maker, I'm sure, has that long list of these awesome ideas and things that they had planned, and then it just didn't work, and it never came out. Even the car industry, you look at all the prototypes that come out, and you're like, wow, it looks sick, but they never make the car.
I think another disappointing one so we're going for 3, right?
Yeah.
The last real disappointment for me was we did a project specifically for the PCA. Back then it was the IPSPR, and it was an Atelier line called Extension de la Racine, the extension of the root. And it was supposed to be, you go to the trade show, PCA or IPSPR, that's the only time you can order it, and that's it. And the first year worked out great. Everybody got behind it. The second year, it started to slow down. The third year, it slowed down even more. The fourth year, people got less enchanted by it. And then eventually we said, okay, we're not going to make it anymore. I think that was a disappointment because we were trying to do something specifically for the PCA, now PCA, to where it was a way to drive people to the show to get that certain product. I think what we had working against us was that Atelier as a brand wasn't as strong yet. And at the time, people didn't want the other brand. They wanted Tatuaje.
Right.
So they ignored the other brand, even though that they have to understand that those brands are Tatuajes. They still are a Tatuaje product. They're just labeled with a different name. But we're coming back out with that cigar at the trade show.
Yeah, I was just so that's kind of how I was going to end the show was, as we get down to the end here, what can we see from you at PCA this year? It's always an exciting time. You weren't at TPE, but you will be at PCA. And what's some of the hype that we can drum up for Tatuaje at PCA?
Okay, so Atelier, it's the 10-year anniversary of Atelier. It's also the 10-year anniversary of Surrogates. So you'll see 2 cigars at the trade show in very small production, specifically to celebrate the anniversaries of both brands. Just one size of each. They happen to be the same exact size. It's a shape that I like to use for very small production. I did it last year in the Black Label line, which is the Britannica. So we're using the Britannica mold for a Atelier Racine, and we're using the Britannica mold for a surrogate called, I don't know if I should say it yet.
You don't have to.
Anyway, it's a
a
surrogate.
people.
Yeah.
It's a surrogate. I'll let Dan talk about that. But it's a surrogate to kind of commemorate 10 years. And eventually that blend for that cigar will come out in a different size. But that particular shape, the Britannica shape, this year is going to be kind of like a celebration shape for all three brands, Atelier, Tatuai, and Surrogates. So at the trade show, you'll also see a Kawai Wan in that same shape.
So we got Slice of Shade saying, "Say it, Pete. Lame." Jay Davis, I'll be your surrogate, Pete.
Oh, and wait, side note, because people have brought it up a few times now. They want to know where you can get that hat, or where they
people
want
to know about the hat. It says Tatuaje on it. If anyone can't figure that out.
Yeah, we make these. You have to go to your local retailer because we don't sell them on the website. The retailers have been buying them to sell to customers, but I don't know. I've been really slow about this one for some reason. It's a hat, I like it.
It's a cool hat. I think you
like it.
Did you have something similar at PCA, but it was more like black and red? I want to say.
Yeah. We had actually all three. There were three versions of it that we make, and one's red, white, and blue. One's red, white, and black, and the other one is this Miami color.
Yeah, that red, white, and black one was sick. So I'm gonna have to find one of those. Does Kirk Kendall have those at Twins? I know he carries Tatuai. I gotta find out.
I don't know.
I gotta find that hat. That hat's sick.
Eventually, we'll put it up on the site, but we didn't make a lot of them, and it was one of those things that I needed some promotional items, and I really like these ones that retailers actually buy and resell.
Is it trucker cap? Is it the mesh on the back?
It's a 6-panel, so it's got the extra panel going through the middle, but a patch on the front.
Yeah, those are some cool hats. Those are sick.
Thank you.
As I said, we're getting towards the end of the show. I want to wrap up. We went a little bit longer tonight, but like I said, with Pete coming on, I had a lot of things I wanted to bring up, and there's always great conversation with Pete Johnson. So, Pete, I thank you for your time, and thanks for coming on with us. I really appreciate it. It was a blast.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This Saturday, we will be on KMA for I think a year-end roundtable kind of thing. I don't know if they've promoted that yet. So just kind of teasing it there. Also, later that day, Saturday night will be the Return of the Spare Note show, where Coop and I will kind of recap TPE as well as the Coop Beef of the Week, which there always is at least one or two. I usually don't know until like the day of. It depends on whatever's grinding his gears the most at the moment. Which I love him to death, so it's always fun content. And we'll be back next Thursday once again. But yeah, Pete, thank you for coming on with us. I really appreciate it. Stay with us until we get off the air too. But that's gonna do it, guys. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to head over to smokintabacco.com as well as our YouTube channel and all of our social media to see all of the TPE content, the videos, the interviews, and all the stuff that we covered at TPE. And there's more to come out. We've been home for like 3 days. We red-eyed home from Vegas on Sunday night, and we've been working our regular jobs too. So I haven't really had time to get all of it out yet, but most of it's out. At least the videos I think are all out up on the YouTube channel. So don't forget to check all those out because it was a blast. It was a great show, and we'll see you next week. Take care, guys.
Bye, everyone.